So, hi and welcome. Here, I just want to very quickly introduce this paper that you would read for the lab. It's a paper by Purge et al. In 2012, and it asks the question, why do axons differ in caliber or in size? Um, and it's a really interesting paper because, for one, it's um, it combines both historical data from other sources and other organisms to try to answer these questions. So you have data from guinea pigs or from octopus or insects and things like that. But the most important thing is to ask yourself, what are they asking? So we do know from lab and also from, I want to say, common knowledge now that myelinated axons transmit um, action potentials faster than unmyelinated. There's less resistance in myelinated axons. We know that. We also do know that the larger the the neuron, the larger, the faster it conducts. Um, and so, before I go ahead here, we know that in skeletal muscles, motor neurons, that yeah, the larger you do need split second responses for reflexes and things like that. So now the question is then, for neurons that are not, or nerves that are not as long, where there really is no premium to having either myelination or even a large axon's caliber, how do they still ensure that information is transmitted as fast as is needed? So and I bring this up here because you'll be referred to chapter to figure 5. And in figure 5, it it asks that, it shows picture from the cochlear nerve and um, the vestibular, and it asks you to make some interpretations of that. So just to give a little bit of background about that organ, so this is the inner ear, and that's the cochlea over here, and here's the vestibular part that maintains balance. Cochlea is for sound, and so the send auditory information to the cochlea, and for hearing basically. But both set of neurons are bundled together in your vestibulocochlear nerve, your cranial nerve number 8. So this is a looking a little bit deeper into that. So I want to point out a couple of things here. So that's the vestibular nerve right here, and that's the cochlear nerve. Right here, the bigger one is the cochlear nerve. And notice that in the cochlea, because it's a tube, I'll show it later, there are different frequencies of sound waves that are picked up in different parts. So at the base, you could have up to 16 kilohertz. Those are really high frequency waves. And at the apex right here, it could be as low as zero point 0.5. So meaning that because it's faster in the, at the base, higher frequency, so you should conduct faster in some shape or form. Um, does that mean the neurons that exit from that part of the cochlea, are they larger, or what else differentiates them? That's pretty much the question. And so here is a another picture of the another picture of, here is the cochlea on the left and a transverse section of the cochlea. So you have a lower canal, an upper canal, and in between there's a middle canal. And in that middle canal is the organ of Corti, which is this image right here, where the hair cells, the outer hair cells and the inner hair cells, transmit messages. They have mechanoreceptors. Receptors are open based on physical movement. And so those transmit um, your sound, or through into the cochlear nerve right here. Okay, so That's it. And again, just for emphasis here, this again is the same structure where it's showing those nerves. So there are two types of nerves. They're the efferent type 1 nerves and the type 2. The efferent type 1 nerves are the ones that do sound. They're the ones that they are connected, as you can see here, to the inner hair cells, and they comprise about 95% of the neurons that make up um, the vestibulocochlear nerve. So if you okay, so so now to our paper, and this is from page 632 of our paper. It says although the cochlear fiber diameter distribution is narrow at a final level, there's a topographic gradient of axon caliber. So this tells you that, it says the apex, which codes low frequency sounds, the apex right here, you can see here it's about 200 hertz, um, uses axons thinner by half than axons at the base, which codes higher frequency. Again, this is very consistent with the size explanation about nerves. So it means that the the at the base, those nerves are larger, and it enables them to transport or transmit information faster. That makes sense. Okay. But they go on and they look at the diameter of the cochlea at the basal side. This is the base. Um, and generally in the cochlea, so I believe this is referring to the apex or somewhere along the middle, it's larger. We see that. Fantastic. So we already know that. We see that with your peripheral somatic neurons that innervate your skeletal muscles. So that's known. Um, but the question is, what else? What else? And that's really why you're reading this paper. It says here, and I highlighted on page 635, that in terms of information, a small motor neuron sends many messages to a few fibers. Okay, so information is high and its redundancy is low. Okay, so that means normally in like there's little redundancy in skeletal muscles where there's a high price for myelination and a high price for larger size of the nerve, of the axons of the nerve. It says large motor neurons send few messages. Um, that's what this says. And so the question is, what else explains what happens in places like the cochlea, where you don't have um, long distances on the optic nerve? And so that's what the paper is trying to see. And it says at the end they talk about an alternative interpretation of axon diameter. It says we had found for the optic nerve that the mean firing rate is linear with the fiber diameter. Yes, we get that. But it now says because low firing rates are intrinsically more efficient, finer fibers carry. I'll let you read the rest of the article. Okay, and it's the alternate explanations to that, and I'd like you to please read that. And um, now that I've set you up, and I want to say also that just to kind of aid your reading, they probed different hypotheses. So it's not only one hypothesis. One of the hypotheses was, oh, maybe those unmyelinated shorter axons, um, for those that have to transmit more information, maybe they have more energy. So they looked at mitochondrial density. The hypothesis was, oh, well, maybe if they have more mitochondria, then that means they will have more, they'll be able to transmit faster because they have more ATP. That's one explanation, but that's not the only one. There's one more explanation that they gave. I welcome you to read the discussion and particularly towards the end to see how they eventually explained one way at least that neurons could differentiate um, how they code information, and effectively by coding I mean how they transmit based on different frequencies, basically saying transmit faster as needed um, in axons like the of the nerves in the central nervous system. All right, that's it. Good luck.